Grunwald? Benton?
Benson, yeah, Benton here too. All right, so first up, we have an animal use for some introductions.
Good afternoon. Mike, it's good to see you. Our condolences. To the committee members here, we have our Chief Perry here with us today, and Stuart DeGroat, along with our advisor for archaeology purposes and American Native Practices, Dan Johnson. Gentlemen. Chief Perry.
Welcome.
Just like to thank everybody for this moment, just for forward thinking, but preserving what's so vitally important to all of us as we go forward in this time. Thank you.
It's going to be great to have you as an advisor.
Thank you. Absolutely. I've asked Stuart DeGroat here to actually be on the council, be on the advisory committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for allowing us to come here and having this committee form. It's going to be an honor to take and sit on the advisory committee and bring light to many things with the Native American cultures and Native American lands. So I thank you.
Technically, I guess you wouldn't be considered a part of the committee, but definitely an advisor to all of us here for your knowledge and experience and
Yep.
backgrounds.
Advisor. Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. Yes, David Johnson.
Yeah, you should say some words.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here. My name is David Johnson, as you know, and I'm a member of the Orange County chapter, New York State Archaeology Association. But I've also been working with Native American First Nations across the United States on assisting them in preserving sites, identifying sites, documenting sites. And I've been asked by Chief Perry to assist him in this along with Animal. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, Chairman, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Animal. Thank you very much. Are we making progress? It looks like we are.
If it's all right with the chairman, I'll stay here with these guys.
Absolutely. Sure. Just for the record, I should say we have other legislators here as well, Legislator Toohey and Legislator O'Donnell. Welcome. How are we doing, Dr. Cass?
Okay, I'd like to also introduce somebody who's incredibly...
Just speak into the microphone. You might have to turn it on as well. Probably got a little slide switch.
I'd like to introduce an observer today. He's very interested in matters of archaeology and prehistory. My son, Daniel Cass. So, here's Daniel.
Mr. Chairman, could you get everybody to introduce who they are so my people know who?
Sure. Good idea, Animal. Okay, so I'll start. Lee Benton, Chairman of this committee, legislator from the town of Newburgh, 16th District.
My name is Stephanie Benson. Oh, geez, that's loud. I am president of the Orange County Archaeological Association, or the incorporated chapter of the good grief. The incorporated Orange County chapter of the New York State Archaeological Association.
Hello, I'm Johanna Poor-Yon, and I'm the Orange County historian.
I'm Barry Cheney, and I'm a county legislator. My district I represent is the Village of Warwick, Village of Greenwood Lake, and the entire town of Tuxedo, and part of the southeastern portion of the town of Warwick.
I'm Mike Paduch. I'm a county legislator representing the 19th District, which is the first ward in the city of Middletown and most of the town of Walk Hill.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Jimmy O'Donnell, 21st District. I actually represent the Caves, Goshen, little piece of Blooming Grove, a little piece of City of Middletown, a little piece of the town of Wawayanda. I'm a guest here. Thank you.
And we also have a former colleague of mine, Mr. Berkman from Middletown. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Unfortunately, I did invite Jeff, and he was very eager to come, but unfortunately, his mother-in-law died yesterday, so he isn't able to make it.
He's right behind you. Okay, so today's highlight is a presentation by Dr. Cass. Are you all set?
I think it's going to work miraculously.
Okay, great. Floor is yours.
This one is said. Can you hear me all right? We good? Okay. Yeah, just remind me in case I need to get closer, and my voice fades. Well, let me begin then, once the lights are out. Okay. First of all, for those of you who I've just met, I am Barry Cass. I'm a professor emeritus, which means I'm retired from full-time teaching at SUNY Orange, a professor of anthropology and sociology courses for more than 50 years now. So I'm a new recruit, an old-timer, as they say. I've had an interest in Dutchess Quarry Caves ever since I joined the local chapter of the Orange County Archaeological Association since the early 1970s. I was involved in excavations under Dr. Robert Funk, late Dr. Funk, New York State archaeologist. In the late 1980s, I think it was, when we were excavating Dutchess Quarry 8. I have pictures to show everybody. So I've actually been involved with excavations at this site. And what I'm going to do is give you an overview of the history of excavations at Dutchess Quarry, reason why this site is so meaningful and important to the science of archaeology, to the history of New York State, to the interests of Orange County and the lower Hudson Valley. This is a very, very important archaeological site. And once again, as I expressed last time we met, I'm immensely grateful that after all these years of advocacy, Orange County government has now organized this committee to further the interests of this region as far as developing perhaps an interpretive center or something along those lines regarding the Dutchess Quarry Cave site. So here we go. Okay. It's a little tricky, so if you'll just give me a second. I haven't had to use this laptop in, oh, those arrow keys there, Dan? Okay. Right. Wrong way. Okay. Can we possibly turn down the lights? Okay, everybody see all right then? We good? So, to begin, let's go back to ancient times, to prehistory, to the Ice Age. And what we can see here, okay, if my little red pointer works. Maybe it doesn't reach all the way up there. Oh, you see it? Where are it? Oh, there we go. Oh, okay, well, there it is. Okay, So this is the Laurentide ice sheet, and we can see, we're about over there, that during the height of the ice ages, let's go back to 15, 20,000 years ago, the southernmost extent of this massive glaciation, unlike anything that we see in modern times, except maybe on Greenland, reached almost all the way to where we are today. And we can see that to the west, there is another massive ice sheet. And because so much water was locked up into these huge glacial masses, sea levels dropped tremendously by 30, 40 feet. And so at that time, what is today the Bering Sea was actually a landmass, a bridge between Siberia here and North America, the Americas here. So there is a lot of controversy about exactly when and how the earliest migrating humans reached North America, either through an ice-free corridor here, sometime around 15 to 20,000 years ago, perhaps. The dating's a little uncertain. Or maybe along the coast here, because there's a very early archaeological site way to the south in Chile called the Monte Verde site down here, which is dated to 15,000 years ago. So again, in archaeology and prehistory, it's not exactly certain when and how the first Americans reached this continent. But where we are, the Dutchess Quarry cave site dates take us back to almost 12 to 13,000 years ago. And so let's take a look at the next slide. And here we see another version of what I was just showing you. And here actually is the Dutchess Quarry site itself right over here. Here you can see the southernmost extent of the glaciation and the ice-free corridor. So by around at least 12 to 13,000 years ago, there were human beings, modern human beings like us, not Neanderthals or any other previous form of ancient hominin, but human beings like us, modern Homo sapiens, inhabiting the Americas as long ago as, in this area anyway, 12 to 13,000 years ago, maybe even earlier in other parts of North America and South America. But the Dutchess Quarry site is, as we're going to see, extremely important because of the ability to date events there with some high degree of accuracy. Another very important site to the south of us is the Meadowcroft Rock Shelter here, which dates even earlier than the Dutchess Quarry site. But we'll see that some really amazing artifacts were found, fluted points. I will show you here at Dutchess Quarry, but not found here at Meadowcroft Rock Shelter, but early artifacts and early dates here too. So this is a very important region for the early habitation, the first human beings ever to come to the Americas. Dutchess Quarry is an incredibly important example of that early occupation. This is just a picture. Will give you an idea of the ice masses. Right before the ice masses, is a non-living zone. It's like living in a freezer. Nothing can really live there. And then as we move farther to the south, that's where Arctic tundra begins. Lichens, mosses as vegetation, short grasses, bushes, and what have you. And again, we'll see that the environment was, very different from what it is today. Today we have a temperate zone, northern deciduous, broadleaf forests. Back then it was more fir trees, pine needles, low bushes and scrubs, very different flora and fauna, animal and plant life. But this will just give you an idea of the ice masses which extended for tens of thousands of miles north and west from basically where we are today and a little farther to the north around New Paltz. Whoops, sorry about that. Wrong button. Hold on. Okay. Some of the important Ice Age animals include the mastodons, not the mammoths. The mammoths were found more in the open areas, but in the small forest zones of this area, mastodons such as this. And perhaps you know that in the Black Dirt region, many mastodon finds have been uncovered, including the Sugarloaf mastodon, which is at SUNY Orange, reconstructed there, the bones there. The type site for mastodons, actually at the Museum of Natural History, excuse me, Museum of Natural History in New York, and that mastodon was also found in this area as well, in the black dirt area. So very important animal and plant life for the early human occupants. Here are, moose, caribou, elk. That'll give you an idea of the environment, what the black dirt region might have looked like during the early occupation, 10 to 12,000 years ago or so. Not as it is today, but a very fertile area of black dirt because of all the organic material from the marshlands and swamplands and mucklands that existed during the time of the early occupation at Dutchess Quarry. Giant beavers, creatures were giant back then, all kinds of giant creatures, including giant beavers, giant wolves, giant ground sloths, all kinds of giant things. Human beings weren't giants, though. Human beings were about the size that we are today, maybe even a little shorter than the average person of today because of our better health and diet and nutrition. But if you want to see giant beavers, there you go. How's that for a giant beaver? All you need is one beaver to make an entire coat, right? I forget where I took this, some rest stop somewhere in the Midwest with some friends at that time. Now, some of the bones that were found in the Dutchess Quarry caves, two of them that are a really important site, are what had been identified as flat-headed peccaries. So I couldn't actually find in an internet search flat-headed peccaries, because I guess they're extinct now, but they were a pig-like animal, and the closest that I can give you as far as a visual example is what you see before you as flat-headed peccaries. So these kind of animals that were hunted and consumed, along with many other forms of animal and plant life, by those early humans at Dutchess Quarry. Caribou were extremely important, especially because of the discovery of caribou bones in a datable context at Dutchess Quarry 1 site. So caribou are really, really important to the whole understanding of what was going on at Dutchess Quarry at that time because of the ability to date their bones. Of course, these creatures are long extinct in this region. By the way, in the old world, in Lapland, they're referred to as reindeer. Here, we call the same creature caribou. They're the same thing, reindeer and caribou. But very important animals as far as the animals that were found through excavations at Dutchess Quarry. Just another view of caribou. So what we have here is a chronological sequence. So Dutchess Quarry Caves is really, really important. I'm trying to get my little arrow back. There we go. Because of the Paleo-Indian, the first level of occupation, going back to, well, this says 10,000, 12,000, 10,000 years, more like 12 to 15,000 years now. This is an older chronology. But Paleo-Indians are a very important stage of human cultural development in this region, because it's thought to be the very earliest cultural stage, as marked by a very important kind of stone projectile point called a fluted point. I will show you examples. There's growing controversy within American archaeology about whether the Paleo-Indians were actually the first inhabitants of the Americas or not. That goes beyond my presentation. Evidence that maybe there were even people earlier than the Paleo-Indians. But anyway, the basic archaeological doctrine is that the Paleo-Indians were the first people here. And their artifacts were found at the Dutchess Quarry site. So this is a very important early stage, the Paleo-Indian stage. And then after the Archaic stage, taking it up to the woodland stage, and then historical contact, in the late 1500s, early 1600s in this region, historical contact. And so what's very important, and I will demonstrate this in a little bit too, is that the artifacts that were found at Dutchess Quarry range all the way from Paleo-Indian through Archaic to woodland, and that there's actually, you can see a visual continuity between late woodland projectile points and early historic points. So the native peoples, the indigenous peoples of this area, in this area, mostly Algonquian peoples, Lenape peoples, more to the west and north, the Iroquoian peoples, we can see a continuity between artifacts from the past to the present. I will demonstrate that shortly. So this is a diorama at the New York State Museum in Albany. This is not of the Dutchess Quarry site, but of something quite similar, the West Athens Hill site at the New York State Museum. And what you see, come in, little red dot. What you see here is a caribou, recently deceased. Okay, so again, you will recall that caribou bones are very important at the Dutchess Quarry site as well. Here is a paleo hunter. And something I want you to note, and this is not trite, but this is really important, form-fitting clothing. And I'll explain why this is important shortly. Not just a cloak thrown over him, but he's actually wearing, pants and leggings and a top that, fits his human form. So this will give you an idea of what the Dutchess Quarry cave sites looked like, approximately speaking, at their time of occupation, again, roughly 13,000 years ago. Is that Athens, New York? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Oops. Oh, phooey. Okay. I'm very visual. I like to look at pictures. So I thought that you would enjoy seeing these pictures as well. But this will give you another idea of paleo times, giant creatures abounding, those mastodons I had mentioned, giant ground sloths and beavers, and what you will. So again, just more visuals to help you picture the importance of the caves. Now, I like to call this picture going to lunch. So it's a little more difficult than going to McDonald's back in the day. I took this picture and the one that follows at actually an incredible museum, if you're ever there, in Mexico City. The Museum of Archaeology in Mexico City is really a spectacular world-class museum. I haven't been there now for many years, but I took this picture there. And we can see hunters. This is a mammoth, most likely, or hard to tell directly, but it's more open country, so probably more of a mammoth than a mastodon, which we find around here. And if you're hungry, this is what you got to do to eat, right? So, rough way to make a living. So now we'll get into the archaeology of it all. And here is Goshen. Here is Florida, New York. Here's the Black Dirt region. And the Dutchess Quarry Caves are on former Lookout Mountain right here, which overlooks the Black Dirt region below. So when you see my pictures of the caves, Dutchess Quarry Caves 1 and 8 along a ledge, those were probably not occupation sites. There are no basic domestic materials found there. Not that they would have had pottery back then. But not much in the way of, stone tool flaking or anything like that. Most likely, the Dutchess Quarry Cave site that you'll see were lookout sites where hunters were stationed to look for game appearing below them in what was then the marshlands and mucklands of what is today the Black Dirt region, but back then more of a swamp. Okay, the living site where the people actually lived probably was on the other side of what was Lookout Mountain, but now blasted away by Dutchess Quarry mining operations over many years. So this is what it looks like today, in case you've never seen, the quarry mining pit here. This is the remnant of former Lookout Mountain. The Dutchess Quarry Caves, plural site, is right on the other side of this prominence, right over here, not here, but on the other side, around the bend over there, looking down towards the Black Dirt region over here. So you can see that the mining operation has been, and this is an old picture, I took this many years ago. The mining operation is really quite extensive. And probably deeper, yeah, that's a pretty old picture I took 20, 30 years ago or more. But this is what it looks like from up there, looking down, Black Dirt area, which again, thousands upon thousands of years ago was just chock full of game, including those massive mastodons, as I mentioned, of which many bones have been found. This is, it's actually a bit dangerous. You know, in the wintertime, it's slippery up there, as you can see. But this is the area where the archaeological sites are to be found. This is the ledge. And this is Dutchess Quarry 1. This is where major excavations occurred by the Orange County chapter of the New York State Archaeological Association going back into the mid-1960s. The members of the chapter back then heard that, you know, Boy Scouts had been visiting this site, had found artifacts strewn about, came up there and started on their own, all voluntary, no one's getting paid for anything, started excavating Dutchess Quarry 1 and found an amazing array of artifacts over the couple of years that they were excavating here. So this is what it looks like today. Late Robert Funk, who I knew pretty well back in the day, gave me a series of historical photographs, of which I'm immensely grateful. And here we can see some of the early chapter members digging away. On weekends, they'd go up there and lug huge rocks and crack them and, you know, dig out all the debris and debitage and so forth and so on. Anyway, a whole lot of physical labor went into the excavation of Dutchess Quarry 1.
Now,
Here you can
sir?
see, yes.
Now, I thought I was told that Dutchess Cave 1 was destroyed and is no longer.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
No, I haven't been there for a couple of years now, but last time was still, everything was intact.
Okay, so you said they lived on the other side, though. What number was that?
Yeah, that archaeological site is a legend, or maybe there's a better term for it. No one's actually, it was apparently the people of this area, kids were going there and finding artifacts. This is in the early 1900s. But then when mining operations began, I think in the 1930s, I could be a little inaccurate about that date, but I think about then, that's when Lookout Mountain was basically blown to pieces, and that site was destroyed before any archaeologist could ever get to it. That apparently was the habitation site, and the reason for it was facing south, warmer, whereas these sites are facing more to the north and west with
Right
those
into the
cold
wind.
glacial winds blowing down.
Yeah, right into
Cold
the
up
wind.
So most likely, this was a place where hunters were stationed, you know, to keep a lookout for the game. And then when they saw maybe mastodon below or whatever, they would summon the other hunters for the hunt. That's the best hypothesis. By the way, I brought an article, which I'll have to remember to give to you, Lee, for reproduction. An article I wrote for the Orange County Historical Journal in 1993 about the Dutchess Quarry site, you know, the different cave sites, and the history of it all. So if you guys want to read all about that, you'll get a copy of my article once it's reproduced. I think you'll enjoy it.
Sorry, I just want to add, and I'll go over it when you're finished, but I wanted to let you know, because I didn't have a chance to talk to you when we first came in. The chapter was recently donated a library by George Walters, who was president of the chapter and did the original excavations in the 1960s. And I brought it with me, a photo album of all of those original excavations that I don't think anyone has ever seen the pictures of, and his field journal from the 1964, 1965 excavations. So,
Yeah, wow, that's incredible stuff. I saw that, but I didn't respond.
So it's like and also in it is, it really doesn't like me. There's also artifact cards and drawings of everything that was in there. But I wanted to let you know that when you're done, we can go over it, and I'd like to even read a little, like the first couple pages of the diary, because it's about why they went into the quarry for the first time. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, great.
So I just wanted to
I saw that email, but, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't we all get hundreds of emails.
It's okay.
That one went by me, but I was excited that George Walters.
I do plan to try to digitize the majority of this so that we, you know, can all have it and it can be added to the record too.
George Walters and Bill Ehlers were the two most prominent members of the Orange County chapter back in the 60s. And I interviewed George Walters for that article I wrote, which you'll get a copy of. He's passed away several years ago. And apparently his family's donated his artifacts that he kept, that he found there, and Stephanie has them now. Well, that's fantastic. I've never seen them myself. So I'm looking forward to that.
And we actually, I believe we probably have a descendant of Mr. Ehlers, probably now going to be a member of the county legislature in January.
Oh, really?
Glenn Ehlers. I can't imagine from Orange County it wouldn't be a relative.
How about that?
Bill was my neighbor growing up. And, Bill Ehlers was my neighbor growing up back when I was little, and I didn't know much about archaeology. But his daughter is actually still a family friend and still friends with my mom, and I hear from her every now and then. So she keeps in touch with what the chapter does and things like that. So, but that's great. That's really great.
Super. Well, I wanted to also point out, I get my little red thing back, this line here, that was the level of where all the fill was in this cave before these hardy volunteers dug it all away. So again, I'm just always amazed at the sheer amount of physical labor that these volunteers put into this, not knowing what they were going to find. You know, rumors of artifacts, but boy, did they find some amazing stuff. So this is a view from inside when the excavations were going on, circa 1965. And this is looking out where there's a screening box here. So all the dirt found within the cave, put into the screening box, shaken, and whatever artifacts were in the dirt then can be identified in the shaking box here. And this is actually George Walters. He gave me this picture. Or maybe it was Robert Funk, I don't remember. And here he's holding a trowel, and he's told me just about where he found the most important artifact that came out of Dutchess Quarry 1, a fluted point, which I will show you, which again is clear evidence of the earliest occupation of the Americas in the Northeast, 12 to 13,000 years ago, that fluted point, part of the Clovis tradition. And I actually have, and I'll pass this around, or you guys can come look at it if you'd like, I have a replica of that point. So I have that as well to show you. So this is an archaeological diagram of what was found in Dutchess Quarry 1. Again, artifacts of all types. The most important artifact is the fluted point that's right over here where George Walters was pointing out the location in the last slide right here. But points, projectile points and artifacts, knives and scrapers and things like that, over traditions of culture lasting for thousands upon thousands of years in this area and in the Northeast as well. So you can see that most of the artifacts were found close to the opening of the cave, which is right over here, including a fairly recent fire hearth here. This is a side view of the cave going down towards the end. They dug a small test pit there, found nothing, dug a deeper test pit here in order to gauge the stratigraphy and the living areas versus the non-living zones. This zone right over here is very important. It's strata 2B, as it was labeled, because that's where the early Clovis fluted point was found, predating all the other artifacts found in this cave. So I have a better picture to show you, the next one, a more colored photograph, but this is the details of what all this is. And so these are some of the important artifacts that were found in Dutchess Quarry 1, including either a projectile point or a borer or driller made out of a deer antler right over here. So organic remains were preserved there. Various early artifacts, Brewerton points and all that. But this is the important Clovis point, or local tradition would have it as a Cumberland point right over here. I'll show you better pictures. You'll see the channel flute right over there. This is incredibly important because this is an eyed bone needle. You can see the eye right over there. And this is a recent invention during the Ice Age so that they could begin to sew skin cloaks together to make form-fitting clothing. And basically, that's one of the major adaptations to surviving in Ice Age times was, warm clothing. The Neanderthals apparently survived very nicely during Ice Age Europe for many tens of thousands of years, but there's no evidence that they were able to sew anything together. So, once more modern humans evolved and replaced the Neanderthals, major new technologies developed, including the eyed bone needle, as you can see here in Europe as well. This is a deer sternum, which was used most likely as a scraper to deflesh hide, to prepare hide for clothing and so forth. This is a borer to drill holes. Other points and knives. Here's a knife. But up here, this is very, very important. Let me show you the next picture because it's a colored picture. You can see it all a little better. These are very late woodland points called Levana points, these triangular points up here. And as I will demonstrate, this will give us a sense of continuity between ancestral Native American cultures, indigenous cultures of this region, and those that followed in New York State, the Algonquian peoples of this area, the Lenape primarily, and to the west, the Iroquoian people. So there is cultural continuity from present to past times with these stone tool points. Okay. So here's what I was just discussing. Late woodland projectile points in New York, circa 1500 Common Era. By the way, in archaeology, we do not use BC and AD systems. Archaeology is global and worldwide in its dating. And so no offense to anybody in the room, but we don't date world events according to the birth of Christ. Okay, AD, Anno Domini, BC, before Christ. So before the Common Era is the more scientific and neutral way to do dating. It still means AD, but it's just CE, Common Era, and BCE is before Common Era, which is BC. So this is a Common Era date, 1500 AD, if that makes you feel, can understand it a little better. So late woodland points, triangular type points, artifacts excavated from a Mohawk Indian village to the west, triangular points, artifacts recovered from 2 Lenape rock shelters near Philadelphia. The Lenape were quite extensive, and you can see towards the top of the sequence, very similar triangular points as well. So there's a cultural continuity from the past, from antiquity, to the present. So Native American peoples in this area do have a direct connection to their ancestors as recovered from the artifact sequences at the Dutchess Quarry sites. Wow. Was that a coherent sentence on my part? Okay. All right. Very good. Robert Funk gave me this picture. This is the Cumberland Point or fluted point, part of the Clovis tradition of fluted points. And this is an amazing discovery because fluted points like this are never found anywhere else, never found in Europe, never found in Asia. This is the first American invention. This is totally unique to the Americas, are these points with channel flutes in them, as we can see here. And again, I have a replica. Anybody wants to take a look at it, after I'm done, certainly welcome to take a look at this. And so we see, here is the projectile point. This is not an arrow point. This is a point either on a spear or on an atlatl dart. And I'll show you what atlatls are in a moment. Okay, but it takes consummate skill, far beyond anything I've ever been able to do, and I've never really tried flint knapping very much. And I'm not even sure that the flint knappers, part of our chapter, are able to do this. Gary Sipola, I don't even know if he's able to make these channel flutes when he makes stone tools. But to actually make this tool and with the most incredible delicate precision, knock out this channel flute, which runs from the base to close to the tip, as we can see here for hafting purposes, is an amazing feat of skill. My article's been reproduced, and thank you, and so everybody will get a copy. This, I won't go through all this, the technology of it all, but here, Paleo-Indians making stone points, including these channel flutes, as you can see being demonstrated here. Takes really a lot of skill and know-how to do that. And production of the Clovis point is, again, give you another quick look at how this was done. through flaking, and then hafting, as you can see here. I also have an idea, and I'm not the only one, I'm not going to claim to have created this idea, but if you know, have an image of military bayonets, there's a flute which runs down the length of the military bayonet, and that's to enhance bleeding. Because if you want to stick somebody with a bayonet, you want them to bleed out as quickly as possible. I hate to be so graphic. And if you stick an animal like a mastodon or whatever, you know, with an atlatl point or a spear point, you want them to bleed as well. So perhaps the channel flutes that were created on these Clovis points were not just simply for hafting purposes, but were similar to military bayonets in order to enhance blood flow as well. I think that makes a lot of sense. And this will give you an idea of atlatls. That's an Aztec word, actually, that's been picked up in archaeology and used today for spear throwers like this. And if you've ever done this, you know, you can get so much more force and distance with one of these. It's like an extra elbow. Much more force and distance with an atlatl than with just throwing a spear overhand. So this was another very important invention, both in the old world, in Europe and elsewhere, and here in the Americas as well, are these atlatls. These came long before bows and arrows, which are fairly recent inventions in prehistory, last several thousand years. We're going back now 10 to 15,000 years ago. So route of early Americans, which I spoke to earlier, okay, so I won't go back over all that, but down into Central and to South America as well. Distribution of Cumberland points. Archaeologists have identified that fluted point found at Dutchess Quarry 1 as a Cumberland-style point. And then I think archaeologists get a little crazy with, you know, very specific designations. A derivative Barnes point, well, okay, whatever. But something that really interests me is that the hearthland of these types of Cumberland points are in the Ohio River Valley here, and that the Dutchess Quarry point is way, way outside of the area of hearthland of the Cumberland fluted points. So does this indicate migration? Does this indicate trade or exchange or the diffusion of ideas about how to make better projectile points? Who knows? Just an interesting little prehistoric issue here that the Cumberland point isn't where it's supposed to be. Here are other of these fluted points, just to give you an idea of the channel flutes. This is not from Dutchess Quarry. These are points from New York State, other sites. This is Dutchess Quarry 8. This is the other major rock shelter site that was excavated long after Dutchess Quarry 1. This is in the late 1980s. I was a volunteer here for the excavations here, also under late Dr. Robert Funk. Some pictures from that excavation. This is Bill Ehlers. This is, Stephanie, you recognize Ed Lennox over here. And that's me taking the picture. And so, you know, some of the, not that I'm putting myself in this category, mind you, but some of the luminaries of Orange County archaeology, you know, were involved in the excavations at Dutchess Quarry 1 and Dutchess Quarry 8, including Dr. Funk. Dutchess Quarry cave number 8, fluted points were found in this cave as well as with Dutchess Quarry 1. By the way, these caves are in very close proximity to one another, only a few feet distance from one another along that ledge. And other kinds of points from archaic times, perhaps. Caribou bones found here as well. Possible hearth found in Dutchess Quarry 8, which is kind of small and narrow compared to Dutchess Quarry 1. Here are some, this point actually is very meaningful to me. These are fluted points, broken ones. This is a broken fluted point. You can see part of the channel up here as well. Other points, Brewerton side notch point from archaic times. Knives, perhaps, over here. But again, all kinds of interesting artifacts, important artifacts found in Dutchess Quarry 8, as well as those prior from Dutchess Quarry 1. I was actually present when this was discovered. I didn't discover it myself. I was helping to move rocks around. And we lifted up a rock, and right underneath that rock, there was a rock fall. You know, there have been rock falls over all those thousands of years, was this broken, beautiful, fluted point. This stone is jasper, and its location apparently is to the south of us in Pennsylvania. This is not native to this area. We find just, you know, sort of grayish, brownish chert in this area, but this more yellowish stone, more to the south, jasper. That's a beautiful point. part of one anyway. And so here, some of the animal remains found include giant beaver, and there's that flat-headed peccary that was identified from Cave 8. So we're almost done. This is the, Joanna, you brought this book with you last time. This is, for those of you who want to read the scientific account of the excavations at the Dutchess Quarry Caves site, archaeological and paleo-environmental investigations at Dutchess Quarry Caves by Robert Funk and D.W. Stedman, who was the New York State paleontologist at that time. I think now he's in Florida, and Dr. Funk has long passed away. There's another important book, in case anybody's interested in pursuing further reading about all this, by another archaeologist from New York State, Richard Gramley, Origin and Evolution of the Cumberland Paleo-American Indian Tradition. In memoriam, I just want to read this to you, the late Robert Funk, Chief New York State archaeologist. The Dutchess Quarry Caves remain, when all is said and done, the only sites in New York State that sample virtually the entire range of the human history in the northeastern United States. This fact, combined with the rich faunal assemblages and the potential for future research, renders the Dutchess Quarry Caves as a place of national significance. We should protect these caves, the education and research potential of which are nowhere near fully realized. Thank you, Dr. Funk, and that is the end. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Questions?
Is this stunned silence?
Peter, come up forward. Microphone.
Possible to get a copy of the presentation for all the legislators to take a look at?
I could make a copy of it, sure.
I mean, or send
Okay.
electronically to Lee and Carrie Ann?
Sure, I don't know, would a file of this size transfer over the internet? Oh, my son, who's a computer graduate from Tufts University, he'll help me out with that one. Okay, so I would just need, from Lee, whoever, I should send this to you and Joanna and,
When it's a PDF, Carrie Ann would get it.
okay. Carrie Ann, do I have your email address? Okay. And sure, I'd be happy to do that. Yes.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks.
Questions from committee members, or should we go right to Stephanie? You want to talk about what you have? Thank you, Doctor. Amazing.
I'm glad to have been able to do that for you, for everybody.
Use that microphone. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, you could just switch
Hopefully.
seats if you want.
I'm right here. Just a few things from the Walters collection that I was just able to obtain in the last couple weeks, actually, that I just wanted to bring, in case anybody wants to take a look before we leave today. I have the Dutchess Quarry and Supply Company Incorporated Cultural Resources Survey, Stages 1 and 2, Report 1 from the August 1992 report prepared by the Dunn Corporation, Hartkin Archaeological Associates, and CUNY Hunter. I have copies and maps that were original copies and maps when the site was nominated to the National Register. I brought a photo album, which is half Dutchess Quarry Caves, half pictures of the Sugar Mastodon excavations, which are largely from 1965, I believe. And George Walters' field diary, which kind of brought me to tears because as an archaeologist, you don't often get to have these, especially from sites that were so significant. I just want to read the beginning if I can. I'll try to kind of go over it quickly. The first pages in this diary will be from the memories of our members and should not be taken for data as far as for actual records from the site. Through the chapter and its members and others, we were informed of the cave, but we were told that it had been explored, but nothing had been found. We were also told that the roof had caved in, that explosives had been placed in the cave, but had never exploded. Our first impressions of the site seemed to prove that the above was true, because of the entails and names engraved on the entrance to the cave, some dating back as far as 1839. Our president, George Walters, then a member of the field committee, was first to go in looking for the site and finding the exact location in May of 1964. We found no reason at the time to excavate due to the fact that the site was in no danger of being ruined or raped due to its secluded geography. At the time, we were trying to locate as many open sites, plowed fields, construct sites, etc., as we could excavate or salvage the material before their sites were turned into housing projects or shopping centers. We did not excavate. With the fall coming on, frost setting in, and possibly of our field activities coming to a close, we decided to further explore this cave. Incidentally, George had found a rock shelter, and through the summer, we had examined and test squared as a field committee, Walter with the help of Ray Decker and Harold Halcott, numerous sites which were recorded. In October, we crawled into the cave, the entrance being 10 to 15 feet across and 2.7 feet high. The cave was damp, and the points in water, lime water dripped from the ceiling. There were many signs of stalactite, but most of them had been broken off. Possibly 50 bats were real from tenants, or were rent-free tenants in our new site. Sometime in October, the first ceiling rocks were moved and a test square was started. Broken bone and a few chips were salvaged. You must understand that at this point, I was not completely impressed as to the possibility of man in this cave. Dolomite limestone can fool people, especially when patination and other booby traps are involved. During the winter, our members, Sel Gibbs, George Walters, and myself, I'm not even 100% sure who wrote this, gave speeches and talks to Rotary Kiwanis, universities, Unitarian youth committees. Sel and George did the talking, I showed the slides. At the conference, we met a biology teacher named Ralph Robinson who didn't have interest in archaeology. He was already interested. Spring came, and the following is an activity record. Up to the first artifacts was found. We did not keep written records. Without the help of Mr. Robinson and his wonderful students, this cave would still be unexcavated. Our thanks and most sincere appreciation to the people who he's writing this about. If all our younger generation are as good as these, we have nothing to fear. If you have ever seen these young ladies and gentlemen work, it would have restored your faith in human nature. And from then it goes on, starting March 10th, 1965, the list of members and high school students started removing fallen ceiling rock from the cave floor, moved 10 plus or minus tons of rock, no excavation, entrance to cave was frozen, and it goes on and on up to the end of 1965, with all of the lists of the people every day who came out to the site, all of the notes sort of artifacts that they found, the cards that they made, notes about Bob Funk coming out. So it was just really amazing to come across this. I have to go through the rest of the documents that I was able to obtain from his daughter. A lot of them are letters back and forth between Walters and other people in the state regarding the caves and the significance of what was found there. So if anybody wants to take a look before we leave. Also in the album is a huge amount of newspaper articles from the 1960s and I think 70s from when they were doing the original excavation. So I just wanted to bring them to show everybody. Like I said, I will do my best as soon as I can to digitize as much as I can of the documents so that we have them. I didn't bring it, but also there appears to be it's like, looks like it was written with or typed with a typewriter, it's so old. One of the manuscripts for the Stedman and Funk book that is also part of Walter's collection, so.
Joanna, is that something that you could help with, the digitizing and working with Stephanie? I mean, great. Yeah, great.
make sure that it goes, now that we have, you know, a committee together, this is all certainly information and history. These are the real historic documents from the initial excavations. So as I go through the collection and I find more of the letters and the documents and stuff, I will try to catalog everything and work on figuring out how to safely digitize them without damaging any of them.
There was no questions from committee members for Dr. Cass on his presentation? Well, I had a question. I thought glaciers were pretty prevalent in this area. I mean, I know specifically in my backyard, I have a stone wall that has dozens of, boulders that are this big around that are granite and completely rolled and tumbled, perfectly round or ovalized. Oh, okay. Well, that's significantly south of here. Mhm. Okay, yeah, because I know down at Bear Mountain, somewhere in the park, at the top of those mountains, you can see the strata, carved lines from the weight of the ice with, boulders rolling underneath them, carving lines in the top of that mountain, and in Central Park, rock outcroppings have glacial marks on them, so. Absolutely, absolutely. Animal, just please come to the microphone.
Started back up the river. The ice was 5,000 feet thick.
Mm.
A lot of weight.
Yes.
Look at the size of that bulldozer.
And I mean, my family is originally from Syracuse, in New York State anyway. And up there, there's glacial I think they're called drumlins? Drumlins, yeah, yep. So Johanna, where do we move from here? I don't see planning here, because I obviously want to make sure that anything this committee does is properly done with all the legal requirements from the historical societies and the federal government.
I guess it depends on what our priorities are. If we're talking mostly about documentation, I think for the first step, before we move forward with any kind of, exhibits or anything, because we're not going to want to put too much attention on the site until we know that we've documented what we have and we've secured what we have. So I don't know, the security would probably be parks and planning, that side of it, and then the education side of it would be some of us that are here in the room.
Okay. I mean, because I know we've talked about it before with, security. I mean, it's pretty secure as it is because it's not identified and marked and there's no big sign that says with an arrow this way.
I'm afraid that if we put a big exhibit together, then all of a sudden it's not secure, because it's right now the security, a lot of it is just simply from the obscurity.
Remoteness.
Of the story, the remoteness. That
Right.
It's not something that's talked about in direct terms right now. Maybe some teachers in some schools locally might talk about it, but not pinpoint its location so much.
Mhm.
But that's going to be impossible not to do when you start showing these maps like the ones we just saw, which really show exactly where the caves are and how they're oriented.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say definitely the first step is gathering the information on our end, and then on the parks end or on the planning end, trying to make sure it's secure.
Okay. Comments from committee members? Animal? And again, Animal, you could sit right at that table and turn that microphone on. Yeah. It should have a little switch to flip. Right, I don't believe so. Correct. Okay. You want to come to the microphone and give a small presentation? I mean, we only have a few minutes because I do want to stop. Right. You could just come together with your thoughts. That's fine. Sure. I don't expect a big presentation. Yeah, exactly. Short and sweet is fine because I do want to leave time to have the committee be able to look at Stephanie's documents that she brought, as well as we need to prepare for physical services at 3:30. So we got about 7 minutes. Just actually, you probably should grab the microphone or that one and hold it right in front.
Yeah. As Barry commented, this is one of the most important sites there is, not only in New York State, but in North America. This site is constantly referred to across the Western Hemisphere, Northern Western Hemisphere, as a benchmark site for Native American studies going back to Paleo times. So it is extraordinarily important. The concern I have, and speaking on behalf of the Lenape, as we have talked with Chief Perry and that many times, is the preservation of the structural integrity of these caves because of the mining that is going on so near to them. And the longer that goes on, the more structural damage it's giving to those cave sites. And this, I think, should be addressed in the near term in particular to help stabilize these monumental historical features there. And in terms of the excavations in that, we also have to be careful how they will inflict possible structural damage to the caves themselves. So a long-term plan to preserve these features, not only to put up a sign or a kiosk saying that this is what's here, but is to preserve this in a way that it will survive the ages, because it is currently being damaged on a daily basis. So that, I think, is one of the main concerns. Do you have any questions or?
Yeah, questions for any of the gentlemen?
Oh,
Mr. Paduk?
one more thing I forgot.
Sure, go ahead.
One of the things I thought about when I was president of the Orange County chapter before Stephanie, not too many years back, and we gave some tours up there. One of the things that is my specialty is looking at the ceremonial stone landscapes of the Native Americans in terms of stone structures in the form of stone piles, cairns, snake walls, and stuff like that. And that type of a survey has not been conducted on Lookout Mountain. And there is a potential for some of those features to still survive on the mountain itself. And I would be more than willing to conduct that survey up there. I'm working with Chief Perry on working on sites in the lower Hudson Valley. And I have a New York State scientific archaeological research permit for the Palisades Park Commission. And we're currently documenting those types of sites throughout the Palisades Park Commission and into northern New Jersey. And it's amazing how many of these sites we are finding that have been neglected or not identified in the past. So that's another survey that could be done on the mountain, and I'm more than willing to do that. All right?
Thank you. That sounds like something Johanna should get involved with organizing with you.
Yeah. And I live locally in Poughkeepsie, so we can do this anytime after the next month because I had a knee surgery 2 weeks ago. But I'm willing to go within the next month or so.
Okay, well, hopefully our weather's going to stay fine because I do, between now and our next physical services meeting day for December, want to try and schedule a tour, a visit for committee members up there so that we can actually see in person.
All right,
Uh,
thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Paduk, a question for the gentleman?
Yeah, that's great to hear that, and I think that's probably one of the most important things we could have. But what I will remind you is that this legislature, but not me, gave all of our abilities to include anything in an RFP about our concerns of where the blasting takes place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, has been given to the county executive's office. We won't see any of it, we won't be able to vote on it, and they can sell it to who they want. So I would suggest that you either ask to make a presentation to them as well, because this legislature has no authority whatsoever to look at the RFP, to add anything to their RFP, or to stop any sale of, even though we own it. That was the worst thing this I've been here a long time, that was one of the worst moves this legislature ever made, in my opinion, to give up our ability to look at the RFPs and include what we wanted. So that was just a suggestion. I think your survey's an important document that they should look at as well. Maybe they could include some portion of it that says, if you buy this, you cannot mine this far or this close to the area. I'm sure he has good intentions, don't get me wrong, but the fact is that the legislature owns it and we have no authority over it. Thank you.
Well, the legislature is what created the buffer zones. That's what we did. Go ahead, Animal.
All right, good, thank you.
And I think this is just an echo of what Mr. Paduk said and what David had to say as well. A prescriptive directive of protection for the vibes and all the stuff that's going on there in weather and water and everything else. 1,000%. We need to make a prescriptive directive now so that this thing stays preserved the way it is and doesn't deteriorate quicker than it normally would. So we'll make those arrangements. The board of directors from our tribe and from our consultants, I have everybody in the world that can put what we need to know on a piece of paper, so we don't need to waste any time doing research. We know what we're going after.
Okay, great. Chief.
It might be interesting to note, I haven't really heard any mention of it from an archaeological position, but when visitors first came to this land, when the Lenape people, my people, fled Manhattan, many of them fled to those caves as a haven. I don't think they brought cans of tuna fish with them, so I don't know what the destruction looks like today. But as you're researching the caves, you might want to look a little closer and find out there's actually a tangible historical presence to those caves also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Stephanie?
I just want to make sure everybody is on the same page that we're not looking to do any further archaeological excavations at the caves right now. And when we met last time, I know at least for me, I kind of didn't even think about it until Johanna had brought it up, that even though so much damage has been done because of how deep they've gone on the other side of Lookout Mountain, but the preservation of the caves is going to need to be hugely examined when it comes to the reclamation, because when that mining operation is complete, even if it's not the blasting, because a lot of us believe, myself included, that it's not the blasting that's causing the damage, it's the drying out of the limestone, because obviously the limestone needs water to survive and stay. But when they're finished mining, they're going to fill that massive hole with water. And what kind of pressure is that going to put on the other side of the mountain? And how much water is going to come flying out of those caves, because we aren't 100% sure of the exact channels that go through them. How far back do they go? Is there any connections? So those are sorts of things that when Tilcon is planning their reclamation, that hugely needs to be addressed, because if we're not able to protect them now per se, we definitely may not be able to protect them when they refill it with water.
And when I was there with the crew, they told me that that was 15 years away, that they were going to mine for another 15 years and then they were going to let it fill with water. So that's not too far from now. It's very soon that we need to think about that.
And I'm sure it was the New York State DEC that made the operation, whoever owns it, have a plan for mining as well as afterwards.
And naturally filling with water is very typical of mining operations, to turn it into a lake or a campground or something to cover it up, cover up a huge hole in the ground, but to make it more beautiful and reclaimed, if you will. But I think that it's the drawing out of the water and then the insurgence of water that is going to be the cave's biggest threat. But that's something that they'll have to work with. Like Johanna said, it's only 15 years from now, and what does the next 15 years of mining operation look like for them? What is it going to look like? How deep is it going to be at the end of that 15 years? So it would be wonderful if we could kind of get an idea of what their plans are for the next 15 years, how deep exactly they're planning to go, and more about what their reclamation plan is. That would be hugely helpful, I think, for all of us to get a clear picture of the future so that we can plan for it.
And I'm sure a lot of those answers are included in their plan that the DEC has on file for their actual permitted processes. Okay, great. I will ask.
We addressed the concern about the water pressures, and it was directed at the committee's engineer. He was going to get back to us with the response to the refilling and what's going on now. So all of those factors have been looked at already. Let's move forward.
Absolutely. Well, we're, again, basically to end today, I think, I would thank the gentleman for coming. Welcome. You'll be invited to every meeting. Animal will make sure everyone's notified so that, again, we can take anything that you have to say under advisement. It's great to have experts as advisors in the different fields. So personally, I will try and work on the copies of the permit so that we know that particular language. And I will also try to, between now and next physical services meeting, arrange on a weekend, probably, a visit, as long as there's weather permitting, both rain or snow. So, any other comments from anyone for today? Oh, you're welcome. Like I said, we're glad to have the chief represented here and advising. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for your work, Animal, because this wouldn't be possible without your connections. You're welcome. Anything else? Thank you very much.